Okay, so for level 2, just one more step from level 1 is you're going to be given an equation and you're going to want to factor it first and then set each factor equal to 0. So let's go ahead and take a look at number 1. And if we were to factor this just like in the last objective, ignore the 0 first and just factor x squared minus 5x. So there's a greatest common factor of an x. So x comes out and x squared divided by x is x. 5x divided by x is 5. And then we're going to bring back in this equal to 0 part. And now it's just a level 1 question. You're going to set this equal to 0, and you're going to set this equal to 0. And adding 5 to both sides, you get x equals 5 and x equals 0. For the second one, again, ignore the 0 for now. We want to factor this, so I noticed that there is a greatest common factor of 5, so I'm going to divide every number by 5, and this just helps me factor because the numbers get a little bit smaller. So we're going to have 5x squared plus 2x minus 48 equals 0, and now I can factor the leftovers here. So 3 terms, we separate it into 2 groups. First 2 numbers I've got to multiply to be x squared. Last 2 numbers are 48. So 6 and 8 will work. I think the 8 has to be positive and the 6 has to be negative. Let's go ahead and check those middles just in case. 8x minus 6x is a positive 2x, so we know that we're good there. So our middles are good. We factored it okay. And now we're just going to set each factor equal to 0. Now what a lot of students tend to forget or just question is, what do I do with this 5? That's still a factor, but the thing is 5 doesn't equal 0, so we just kind of ignore it. Now if it was 5x equals 0, then x would obviously be a solution. X would equal 0. But in this case, if it's just a number, just leave it alone. It really doesn't, it doesn't matter in this case. But if there's a variable, it does matter. So go ahead and set the rest of them equal to 0. So x will equal negative 8 and x will equal a positive 6. Okay. Number, I think this is 6. So again, we're going to ignore the 0 for now. We're going to factor this. So is there a greatest common factor? There isn't, but I noticed that 16 and 9 are perfect squares. And it's subtraction, so it's a difference of perfect squares. So it will follow the pattern of 4x minus 3 and then 4x plus 3. And if you check your middles, you'll see that the middle terms will cancel out. So now I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. And I'm going to add 3 and divide by 4. So x will equal 3/4. And then subtract 3 and divide by 4. So x will equal negative 3/4. Okay? And last but not least, okay, notice this one is not equal to 0. In order to use the zero product property, we need it to equal 0. So I'm going to add 14 to both sides. And since there are no like terms with 14 on the left-hand side, we're just going to leave it as a separate term. And now it equals 0. And now I'm going to go ahead and factor. There is no greatest common factor because the middle term isn't even, so 2 isn't a factor, and there's only x's in the first 2 terms. So I'm going to set up 2 factors. First 2 terms have got to be multiplied to be 2x squared, so my only options are x and x. 2x and x. And now factors of 14. I've got 7 and 2, 1 and 14. So I'm going to try to put the 7 here and the 2 here and see if that works. Let's see, that's 2x and 14. If I add those, that's going to be 16. That's going to be too much. So I'm going to try something else. I'm going to go ahead and switch the 7. Okay, I'm going to make this a 2 and make this a 7 and see what happens. So this is going to be 7x, this is going to be 4x, and that does equal 11. So I know that those are good, and both of them are going to be positive. So now I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. 2x plus 7 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. So solving each for x, x equals negative 7/2, or you can leave it as a decimal, that's 3.5. And then subtracting 2 over on the other one, x is going to equal negative 2. So that is how you use factoring to solve quadratics using the zero product property. So go ahead and try those level 2s.